I expected to find some unpleasant transphobia in this film, these however many years later, 30 years later. And there is some, though not as much as I expected. What I did not expect, and in fact found, is a sort of like anti-feminist backlash undercurrent. It's quiet, it's subtle, but it's there, this sort of men's rights and like this over and over again subtle lampooning of women who dare have the audacity to expect men to be serious. Have you ever had something you love dismissed because it's just pop culture? What others might deem stupid shit, matters. It's worth talking and thinking about. And so do we. So come overthink with us as we delve into our deep thoughts about stupid shit. I'm Tracie Guy-Decker, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit, because pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head? On today's episode, I'll be sharing my deep thoughts about the 1993 film Mrs. Doubtfire with my sister, Emily Guy Birken, and with you. Let's dive in. Okay, I know we've seen it together, but tell me, what furniture is in your mind about Mrs. Doubtfire?
So this was never one of my favorites, in part because it relies on some of the kind of the humor that I find hard to watch. So like that scene in the end where he's doing the quick change, I hate those kinds of moments. I really hate those kinds of moments. And so much as I love and have always loved Robin Williams, this was not a favorite movie of mine. But there were moments in my head that I found a little bit delightful, sort of. So there's the bus driver who had a crush on him as Mrs. Doubtfire. And I don't know why I liked that, because it was meant to be cringe humor that I don't like. Because Robin Williams was a very hairy man, and he did not bother shaving his legs as Mrs. Doubtfire. And the bus driver sees his legs, and like you can see that the character is a little concerned, like, oh, I've been found out. And the bus driver's like, no, it's natural, the way God made you, or something like that. And for some reason, I just really liked that. Now, that may be because little Semitic Emily also has very hairy legs. I don't know. There was just something about that I found like kind of lovely, even though it's within this sort of transphobic cringe humor moment. So that's something that stuck with me. The moment when the Daniel character is about to be found out because he's taken off his Mrs. Doubtfire makeup and puts his face in the cake, so it looks like he's got cold cream on, because that's kind of brilliant. Hello. So that's in there. And then the one thing that I remember really connecting with, so when our parents divorced in 1982, our mom tells the story of they did not do alimony and they did not do child support, but they decided that they would meet up once a month because we were very little. You were 6, I was 3. They would meet up once a month and do an accounting of what of what they'd each spent. And so mom had taken us to like the dentist and the eye doctor and something else. And dad had taken us to the zoo and Wild World and something like that. And she owed him $20. And she's like, we don't need to do this again.
Yeah.
And the fact that Daniel is the fun parent, and the fact that this movie came out 10 years after mom had that experience with our dad, who had specifically wanted custody of us on the weekends, in part because he wanted to be the fun dad on the weekends, which is like a systemic thing that happens, it's in my head. And I think that is also part of the reason why this has never been one of my favorite movies. So those are the things that are in my head about this movie. So tell me, why are we thinking about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, like you, I have a hard time with that sort of cringe humor, and there was a lot of it in this movie, which wasn't in my memory, but it is so beloved, and it's Robin Williams, who we both love and associate with our dad, and I think, when we were sort of looking at the list of like 80s and 90s movies, I was like, oh, I want to watch that again. I wonder if it holds up, it was just sort of that, like, it just sparked something as we were looking at the list, so that's why it surfaced now. It wasn't anything super deep and meaningful, but I just wanted to go back, especially since it is so beloved. I think sometimes the more beloved a piece is, the more interesting our deep thoughts can be. So that's why. So let me give you a quick where I'm going, some postcards from the analysis, and then I'll do what I can for a synopsis. So I expected to find some unpleasant transphobia in this film, these however many years later, 30 years later. And there is some, though not as much as I expected. What I did not expect, and in fact found, is a sort of like anti-feminist backlash undercurrent. It's quiet, it's subtle, but it's there. This sort of men's rights and like this over and over again subtle lampooning of women who dare have the audacity to expect men to be serious, to actually be responsible, or who get resentful when they have to clean up after them, when women have to clean up after men. Like there's this lampooning of these women that I didn't see in the 90s. And like, I deeply identify with Sally Field's character, Miranda, this time around. So that was something that I was surprised to find. You're right. There is a lot of cringe humor. It was actually kind of hard to watch for me. There were moments where I was just like, oh God, it's got to be over soon. It's got to be over soon. So that was something. I think there's also something like weirdly like essentialist about gender that's an undercurrent of this. Like, Daniel had to become a woman in order to learn how to clean and cook and like expect the kids to do their homework. And like, ew, I think.
Ew.
So there's just some stuff in there that's just like unexpectedly ick. This is not where I expected the ick to be. So that'll be interesting for us to talk about a little bit. We can talk about that bus driver moment as well, because I think there's also something weird in that. I think every woman in the world has been in that moment where some stranger is feeling flirty and you're feeling harassed. And to have that happen to Robin Williams dressed as a woman, what are we meant to think and feel about that? It's almost like he can take it better than we can, which is like also ew. So we can get into that a little bit. Let me give you a rundown. I'm just going to hit the highlights. We meet Daniel Hillard, Robin Williams' character. He is a voice actor. We meet him while he's actually voicing a cartoon about a little bird, like think Tweety Bird kind of a look. And he ends up half quitting, half getting fired when the character is like given a cigarette, like a last cigarette before the cat's going to eat him. And instead of doing the line, which is like, oh, that's so good about the cigarette, Robin Williams is like, ugh, that's disgusting. I would never do that. And so like the voice doesn't match or whatever. And he kind of quits, kind of gets fired because of this refusal to.
Is it like an ethical thing because it's for kids?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So we do get an immediate sense that like he cares about what message he's giving to kids.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We are meant to applaud him for not just reading the line as it stands. He's also, though, we see he's like against a hostile audience because he says, his producer who's in the booth with him is like, just read the line. And he turns to the sound guys behind some glass and is like, what do you guys think? You think we should be promoting cigarettes to kids? That like all three of them are smoking.
It's hard to remember when that switched over.
When people smoked on cigarette.
When that switched over. Because
yeah, because people, they don't generally now on screen. This, though, I wonder if it was one of the late holdouts because, like, it made a point and it was all about how cigarette smoking was bad. So that may have been intentional.
I'm wondering if it's one of those, like, that was an easy point to make because at that point it had become clear that was bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Anyway, so continue.
Okay. So he's in San Francisco. He leaves. It's made clear that, like, if you leave now, you're never coming back. So he's just lost his job or quit his job. It's unclear. And then we see him go pick up his kids from school. 3 of them. There's Lydia, who's 14, Chris, who's 12, and Natalie, who goes by Natty, who's 5. And they are surprised to see him. They say, we didn't think you could get us. And he said, well, I got off early. And they go, you got fired again, didn't you? And he says something about creative differences. And one of them says, actors, which is exactly what the guy in the booth had said, like the same way. Anyway, it's Chris's birthday. He says, we're going to have a party. Lydia, stick in the mud, we're already seeing. She says, no, you can't. Mom said no because of your report card. Dad says, Mom won't be home for another 4 hours. You guys ready to see the Wild Kingdom? So he has brought out a petting zoo. There are children and animals everywhere on this, like, it's this big, gorgeous San Francisco home, and like the animals on the stoop and in the house. And it's like, it's pandemonium. So we see the neighbor, like, very upset, like an old lady neighbor, like very upset about the animals. She calls Miranda, Sally Field, who is the wife and mother, who is a high-powered interior designer, like for like high level, like think.
She's Martha Stewart.
She's Martha Stewart, but like for hotels, like for like corporate, like, so she's like a high level designer, and she's clearly very successful. She gets a call from this neighbor about this mess. So she comes home. She's got a cake for Chris's birthday, and she comes in and there's children jumping on her furniture and there's ponies in the living room. She sets down the cake to like figure out what's going on, and an animal starts eating it. She pulls the plug on the music. Daniel is dancing. It's that 90s song, jump up, and jump around. So Daniel's dancing with two kids, including their son, Chris, on their dining room table. So then we see them arguing, and they're cleaning up. And, you know, his reaction initially is like, oh, you're home early. I was going to have it all cleaned up. Like, yeah, right. So they're cleaning up. They're yelling at one another. She's like, do not make me the monster. You always do this. Like, I have something planned and you have to overdo it. And then I end up having to clean up, and then I'm the bad guy. She asks for a divorce. So the next scene, we meet his brother, who's played by Harvey Fierstein, who was in Independence Day. So he's a through line here for these last two episodes. Oh, no, a couple episodes ago. Anyway, his brother, Frank, and Frank's boyfriend, Jack, they do makeup, special effects and makeup.
Like for film or Broadway or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So we're introduced to this character. This is important. Fast forward, the court has awarded, at least temporarily, primary custody to Miranda. He gets Saturdays, and he's very upset by this. He says, I've never been away from my kids for more than a day since they were born. Like, they're so important to me, please. And the judge is like, you don't have a job. You don't have a place to live. I'm giving you 30 days to get on your feet, and then we can reassess for more like joint custody. So fine. So he's going to do that. So he gets this crappy apartment. We see the kids in the apartment with him like on a Saturday, and they're eating takeout, like Chinese takeout, and they're having a conversation, and like they mention mom, and he says something like, how is the old battle axe? I mean, mom. And then he says, I would hate, you know, they say she seems really good or whatever. I don't remember exactly. And then he says something like, I would hate for her to get amoebic dysentery. And the little one is like, what is that? And the boy, the middle kid, is like, that's when you get diarrhea until you die. And the little one's like, you want mommy to die? Yeah. My sister has her mouth is open, jaw drops. Like, yeah, it's pretty bad.
That is some incel shit.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. So Lydia, the 14-year-old, is like, Dad, you're not trying hard enough. You need to try harder. And he says that he will. And then mom shows up an hour early, and he gets upset. You're my goddamn kids too. So mom comes up to the house, and she's like, I don't have time for this. I have all of these errands to run. She names all the things, including going to the newspaper office. He says, oh, are you going to place a classified, like a personal ad? And she says, not that it's any of your business. I'm going to hire a housekeeper. And, you know, for what? Well, to help cook and to clean and to be there when the kids get home for a couple of hours. He asks if he can be that person. And the kids are kind of like, yeah, Dad can be that person. She just doesn't trust him, right? But he does sort of say, can I see the ad? Like, I'm their dad too. And so so he takes the ad, and it's like, this is the 90s. So it's like a form that she had filled out manually. He changes two of the numbers in the phone number and gives it back to her. So then nobody's going to answer her ad because the wrong number was printed. So he calls her repeatedly as different people because he's a voice actor, remember? And like makes sure there are all these bad options until then he delivers Mrs. Doubtfire, who he didn't have a name for. Like, Doubtfire came from like a headline that was like, police Doubtfire was accident. So that's where that came from. Meanwhile, we've seen his court-appointed liaison, who is a humorless woman in her like late 50s, who again is meant to be like another sort of anti-feminist picture because she's such a sourpuss and she has no sense of humor and he cannot make her laugh and therefore she is awful.
Feminists have no sense of humor.
Exactly. He gets a job shipping, like as a shipping manager. It's a film company, but he's not acting. He goes to his brother and his brother-in-law. He says, "Can you make me a woman?" And there's a, fire scene's like, "Oh, I've been waiting for this day," or whatever it is. So they dress him up in like many different sort of characters, and then Williams is doing the voices for these different characters, and then it's say like
classic 90s montage.
Exactly. It is a classic 90s montage with him as like the old Jewish bubby and like a Barbara Streisand kind of a feel. And then like it's like long nails. Like I think this might be too much for the... Anyway, finally they land on Mrs. Doubtfire. They have to like take a cast of his face because the face, Mrs. Doubtfire's face is like a rubber mask. So he interviews, he gets the job. And now as Mrs. Doubtfire, he's doing all the things he wasn't doing as dad. He's making the kids do their homework. He's ensuring that they eat well. I mean, he's sort of cheating because like the first time he like burns stuff and there's a moment that's meant to be very funny, which kind of isn't anymore, where he's like leaning over the stove and his like rubber boobs catch on fire and he puts them out with pot lids. And he says, "It's my first day as a woman. I'm already having hot flashes." And so he orders takeout delivery and like plates it as if he cooked it. But then he actually learns to cook. He's like, we see him and in his crappy apartment watching Julia Child, and he's cleaning. There's that classic 90s montage of him like dancing with the vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, I remember
and
that
the broom.
one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like just generally making their lives better. Like the kids are doing better in school and they really like Mrs. Doubtfire. She offers like discipline, but also like does the things that like Natty loves to be read to. And so she's like reading Stuart Little. And even Miranda is sort of confiding in Mrs. Doubtfire. We hear them actually talk about the marriage where, she sort of talks about how hard things were. And he's like, "Well, why didn't you ever say?" It's like, what? Anyway,
she probably did many, 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 many times.
Right. So introduce a new love interest for Miranda. Pierce Brosnan. Stuart is his name. I don't remember his last name. It doesn't matter. He is very successful. They have a history. They dated in college, and he's now a very successful man. He's looking to like launch a new high-end bed and breakfast. He wants the design firm to do it. He asked for Miranda by name. He's clearly very interested. And she's interested back, even though she's sort of like, "I'm going through a weird divorce. Like, I don't know." But he's actually pretty good. Like, I feel like he could have backed off a little more than he did, but he also stayed pretty steady and like, you know.
And it's not, I didn't remember that they have a history, but the fact that they have known each other before, that makes it a little bit less weird that he doesn't.
Yeah. Especially like she says, "I'm going through a divorce." And he was like, "I just wanted you to be happy. I'm so sorry to hear that that's not working out." And you kind of believe him. I mean, he also was just asking her to meet up for drinks. So there's a little bit of push me, pull me. But I think we're meant to mainly think he's a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
And has her best interest at heart. They do have this history.
Yeah. It's also like, it's Pierce Brosnan.
I mean,
damn.
Yeah. And it's Pierce Brosnan in the 90s.
Damn.
So,
I mean, he's still damn, but like, damn.
He is. But he was like, yeah, he was pretty, yeah. So they start dating. Meanwhile, Daniel as Doubtfire is like trying to like slut shame Miranda, is trying to like tell her that he doesn't want anything but sex, is like, "Do you really like," and he's like doing like little things that it's kind of gross. Like he comes to the house one day and Stuart is already there, and Daniel as Doubtfire like rips the hood ornament off of his Mercedes and like ends up like handing it to him. And like Stuart says, "I'm from London and I have a home there. Whereabouts in England are you from? Your accent's a little muddled," or something like that. And the response is, "So is your tan, dear." Which is like, I mean, it's just really kind of gross. So shenanigans ensue. with like Daniel trying to stay a part of this family because he loves his kids, but also like really trying to be a roadblock for Stuart and his ex or soon to be ex-wife, I guess ex-wife. And then there's some moments like what you remember where he's like having to like quick change. So the thing that you remember with the cake, the court-appointed liaison who's checking up on him is at the house when he's coming home from his first day as Doubtfire. And so she runs into him at the front door. And as Doubtfire, he says, "Oh, I'm Daniel's sister visiting from England," which she knew he was a voice actor. Why didn't you just say it was a gig? Anyway, so then the shenanigans ensue. The rubber mask falls out the window and gets run over by a truck, which is why he ends up having to put the cake icing on his face as cold cream. And then the climax that you remember, he has this opportunity to maybe get a show at the TV station where he's working because he ended up kind of like riffing, he didn't think anybody was listening, and the owner of the station saw it and thought it was funny. Honestly, it was only mediocre. I mean, even for Robin Williams, like the actual thing that we saw him do. But whatever. He has an opportunity to pitch the guy. He needs to be at the Bridges restaurant at 7 p.m. on Friday. And then it's Miranda's birthday, and Stuart is taking the whole family, including Mrs. Doubtfire, out to dinner for Miranda's birthday at Bridges at 7 p.m. on Friday. He tries to get out of one or the other and somehow can't. And so he goes and tries to do both. And he's doing this quick change in the bathroom. Meanwhile, the station owner guy is like, Mr. Lundy is pushing alcohol on him. Like, I mean, they're matching like scotch for scotch. And like you on screen see him down at least 4 plus 2 glasses of wine. So he's real tipsy in these quick changes. He loses the dentures in the glass of wine. And then Stuart helps him.
He forgets that he's dressed as Mrs. Doubtfire and ends up
That's at the very end.
Yeah.
I'm getting there. So as Mrs. Doubtfire, he says some really horrible things to Stuart. Like, Stuart gives Miranda a diamond tennis bracelet for her birthday. And when Miranda and the kids are away from the table, Mrs. Doubtfire is like, says, I guess you're trying to get in her pants, but like in all of these horrible ways. It's really, really gross. And then he has to go back to, he's going back to Lundy. He's really drunk at this point. He hears that the food is up for their table and decides to go sabotage Stuart's food and puts cayenne pepper all over his meal, which he told the waiter that he was allergic to pepper. And then he goes back to Lundy's table, the station manager still dressed as Doubtfire, and he sits down talking with his voice, Daniel's voice instead of Doubtfire's voice. And Lundy's like, "Who the hell are you? What the hell's going on?" And then finally he says, "Oh, well, meet your new host for your TV show." And then out of his corner of his eye, he sees his family's table, and Stuart is choking, like can't breathe. And so he runs across like vaults tables to get to them and gives Stuart this very violent Heimlich maneuver, eventually getting the shrimp out of the guy's throat. But in all of that melee, the rubber mask has started to come off. So Miranda sees who he is, and she rightfully freaks the fuck out. He says to Stuart, "Sorry about the pepper, man." And Stuart kind of like hits his own solar plexus with his fist and sort of like nods, and then they shake hands. Like, it's all good because you saved me from choking, I guess. The next we see is another court moment, and the judge doesn't even mention the fact that he tried to kill his wife's new boyfriend. Just says like, your behavior recently is unorthodox at best, and you may have supervised visits on Saturdays. And he gives this speech about how taking his kids away from him is like taking away his heir. The judge is like, "That was pretty convincing, but I think you're a very good actor. So this is it. This is my ruling." We see that Miranda feels really guilty. She seems to be having second thoughts about this. So the next scene, the family's at home. They're interviewing new nannies. It is not going well. They talk about how much they miss Mrs. Doubtfire. They hear her voice, and it's the TV because he's gotten his show, and she's doing this kid's, or she, Mrs. Doubtfire, Daniel as Mrs. Doubtfire is doing this show. And Miranda goes to visit Daniel on set. She says, "I'm really proud of you. This is going great. And the kids miss you." And he says, what do you want me to do? You want me to pretend this is no big deal? You want me to pretend that I'm okay and put on a happy face? Cut away, back to the home. There's a knock at the door. Mom says, get ready. The kids say, oh, I guess it's the new babysitter. And they open the door and it's Dad. And he's going to spend a couple of hours with them every day after school. And the kids are like, what about the court? And Mom's like, I took care of it. So they are really excited. The 3 kids and the dad drive away. Meanwhile, Mrs. Doubtfire is reading a letter from one of her fans whose parents are getting divorced, like on the TV screen, and talks about how sometimes grown-ups, even when they don't love each other, they still love you and it's not your fault, and families look all different kinds of ways. And that's sort of the voiceover and how it ends. So we see the moment that your jaw dropped open when Daniel was bad-mouthing Miranda in front of the kids. There's another moment when he first shows up as Mrs. Doubtfire at the home, and Miranda starts to say something about Daniel. And as Mrs. Doubtfire, Daniel says, I know you ordinarily send the kids out of the room before you bash their father. So, like kind of shaming her into like not talking bad about him, which as I'm watching now, like, you said the thing about amoebic dysentery to your 5-year-old. Like, what? So anyway, there's like more in there. There's a lot more of the rivalry. There's more about him actually like getting his shit together. Mm-hmm. But those are peripheral to kind of the main thrust of what I want to talk about. I'll bring them in if I need to. I'll start with Bechdel test. Reminder, listeners, are there at least 2 female characters with names? Do they talk to one another? Do they talk to one another about something other than a boy or a man? This passes Bechdel. There are many more than 2 named female characters. And I know for sure Natty and Lydia, the 2 sisters, talk about school and about what Natty did at school that day. So it definitely passes Bechdel. Got that out of the way. And there is so much gender stuff in this movie, which, I mean, is to be expected with this guy who goes in drag in order to see his kids. But the actual nature of the gender stuff is like, it was surprising to me on rewatch. It was really surprising to me on rewatch. I read one, I will link to it in the show notes because I think that this analyst did a really great job. It's on a website called The Third Disc, like a blog. The title was Mrs. Doubtfire and Its Peculiar Post-Feminist Backlashery. Mm-hmm. And this analyst did a really great job sort of looking at the kind of hidden lessons. I was very impressed with this analysis. I will link to it. But one of the things that this person pointed out is like named all of these female characters who represent sort of like the things we're meant to dislike about feminists, right? So there's the humorless court-appointed person who we're meant to really dislike because Robin Williams can't make her laugh. There's Miranda, who frankly is completely justified in 100% of what she says, but we're meant to see her as some sort of like ball-busting buzzkill, Like, I was much more sympathetic to Miranda this time around than I think we're meant to like come to like her because she eventually sees how much Daniel just loves his kids and makes it happen. But from the moment she's first on screen, the moment she first confronts him, like, she is fully justified. This man-child, like, just destroys stuff and then sets her up as a bad guy. But that's not what the movie makers are meant to have us think about her.
And he can do that because she's there. Like, if she had gotten hit by a bus, what would he have done?
Right. There's also, like, even the kids, right? We have Natalie, who's 5, who hasn't been, like, ruined by feminism yet, who's just, like, all sweetness and light and awe and wonder, and she thinks her dad is the bee's knees. And then there's Lydia, who's 14, who sees how hard mom is working, who sees how dad is not working hard, mm-hmm. and, like, calls him on his bullshit. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because she's already been a little bit ruined by feminism.
Yeah.
So, like, I was not expecting that in the gender stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also, like, this undercurrent of what easily, like, you don't have to stretch to turn some of the fundamental lessons that are assumptions undergirding this movie into sort of the like men's rights movements kinds of things, you know? He just wants to be with his kids. Why are you making this so hard? And yet he lies, he deceives, he assaults her boyfriend like multiple times. He like breaks his car, you know, pulls the hood ornament off the car. He throws a piece of fruit at him, which it is in my memory. That's part of the furniture of my mind that I thought was hilarious in 93 when Williams as Doubtfire says, "It was a run-by fruiting." I thought that was really, really funny. But like watching it now, it was assault, you know? And he was mad because this guy is quote unquote stealing his family. Like, that's the way he names it. And then he knows the man is allergic to pepper and then puts a whole bunch of pepper on his meal. And, like, we don't know what kind of allergic he is.
Yeah.
And he says, when he sees Stu choking, he says, "Oh, God, I killed the bastard." But, like, he maybe could have.
Yeah.
And we're meant to just, like, boys will be boys. But he made us laugh, so it's okay. You know, like... And it doesn't feel like a stretch to sort of say, like, that is dangerous. That to not hold Daniel accountable for that behavior, to not have him have consequences, including not having access to his kids.
Yeah.
And I am not someone who feels that, like, families should stay together, period. And also, that's dangerous behavior.
Because I didn't remember that the judge at the end says, like, that's very, very convincing, but I believe that you're a good actor. Like, I had not remembered that part. And so, like, good on the filmmakers for doing that, because that's actually, that is responsible of the judge for having done that. But then it's on the woman to feel guilty.
Right. And the thing is, the judge apparently doesn't even know about the fact that he assaulted the boyfriend, because I think Stewart would have been within his rights to press charges.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't mention that. He doesn't mention the assault of the boyfriend. He just says the unorthodox behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like...
Well, and here's the thing I'm thinking. So something I see consistently, like people talking about online, is there is this, like, male fantasy you get among like men's rights activist types is like, I would do anything to protect my family. And they mean it in like the Second Amendment way. Like, I arm myself to the teeth to protect my family. And then people push back saying like, okay, will you do laundry to protect your family? Will you cook to protect your family? Because your family is more likely to be in danger from parasites, from like COVID, from, from malnutrition than they are from an armed intruder. And so that's the sort of thing, like the stand that Daniel takes at the beginning, like, I'm not going to say this line because I am protecting kids, which I don't want to encourage kids to smoke. If I lose followers because of that, I am okay with that.
Right.
But the thing is, like, you need to be able to put food on the table for your kids. You need to keep a job, and you need to be able to like have a house that is clean, and you need to be able to, and safe. You need to know how to cook for them. You need to know, like, make sure that they get their homework done and shepherd them safely to adulthood. And so it's that same sort of, now it's much more charming because it's Robin Williams and he's hilarious, but it's that same sort of like, I get to choose what it looks like to care for my kids. I get to choose what it looks like when I say I love them like air.
Right. What's interesting, only building on what you've just said, is that in this movie, he does do those things. Learns to cook, learns to clean, helps them with their homework. But he has to put on female gender, quite literally, put it on in order to get there.
Because it's women's work?
Yes? Question mark? Like, that, this is one of the things that, like, is surprising to me about gender in this film. That, like, that making that connection. The fact, like, why couldn't he have done those things as Daniel, as dad? He needed to be Mrs. Doubtfire to be the dad those kids needed. And what does that say about, I feel like I could make an argument that that is in fact a critique of gender roles,
Mhm.
of traditional male gender roles.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm not sure it actually was framed that way. I don't know how it was, I don't know what to do with how it was framed. I think we're meant to think like this guy is like just so devoted. He would do this thing, which is totally absurd.
Emasculating.
Yeah, literally. And he did it because it's what the kids needed. And clearly it's what the kids needed. They're all happier. They're all thriving, including Miranda, as a result of Mrs. Doubtfire's influence. But why couldn't he have done those things as Daniel?
Well, because he wasn't interested in what they needed until he faced real consequences.
I mean, maybe. Yeah.
Well, because that's the story. I mean, whether or not the filmmakers did this intentionally, that is the story you see over and over again. I mean, what is it, like 70 or 80% of divorces are initiated by women? It's because men like Daniel don't do what's needed until they're forced to.
I mean, people don't change when they're comfortable.
Mhm.
But I guess adding this layer of the gender performance, of his performance as Mrs. Doubtfire, like really makes it like messy for me, because Daniel was capable. He was capable of doing the things. He could have just done I mean, it wouldn't have been a story. It wouldn't have been the cringe humor that was so popular in the 90s.
It also gets to that sense of entitlement, because he feels entitled to Miranda. That's where my jaw dropping comes from, where he's like, oh, I hope she doesn't get amoebic dysentery. And he like feels like he has the right to throw limes at the new boyfriend and poison him, is because he feels entitled to this woman and this family, despite doing nothing to be what they need.
Yeah.
And this
rewatch has really left a bad taste in my mouth.
That's a shame.
It really has.
That's a terrible shame. Just because I know that is not what... I don't know. I didn't know the man. And I don't want to put... I've since Neil Gaiman, I'm trying really hard not to put celebrities on
not to
pedestals.
project. Yeah.
From the things that I have read about Robin Williams and some of the things that his daughter has said publicly about him, and he seems like he was a gentle soul. And it seems like I don't think he would have wanted to have put something ugly out there.
Yeah.
But that's like, we swim in this and we don't realize it.
I think that's exactly it. Yeah. And in the 90s in particular.
And like what you and I grew up with, go for the joke. So the drive-by fruiting was hilarious. Like, go for the joke. And like, it takes distance to realize how, wait, what? No, how is that funny?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So 2 more things I want to make sure I touch on. One is that, and actually they're kind of related. One is that I came into this anticipating finding a lot of transphobia. And it was not as much as I thought there would be. So there is a moment, actually the kids figure out who he is, because he's in the house as Mrs. Doubtfire and goes to the bathroom and doesn't close the door all the way. And Chris comes in and he's peeing standing up. And Chris like freaks out, like goes into Lydia, call 911, like, because apparently a trans woman is... But anyway.
To be fair, in 1993, children would have had no context for that.
Yeah, agreed. Anyway, so he's like freaking out and like really upset. And so Daniel comes out to them. It's me. It's dad. I did this so I could be with you. And Lydia, when she realizes it really is dad, she like gives him a hug. And like, she's really excited. And he goes to hug Chris. And Chris is like, no, I'm not mad, but like, I don't want to hug you like this. And Daniel's like, it's like a guy thing. Yeah. And like, I actually don't know what that means. Does he not want to hug him because he's like, I don't know what the kind of holdup was. So, but it feels like transphobia. The other moment, in that moment, Chris is like, you don't actually like dressing like that, do you? And Daniel's like, I mean, some of it's comfortable. No, it's terrible. I did it so I could be with you. You know, so that moment really didn't age well. And I genuinely don't know. Like, they just sort of say like, oh, it's a guy thing that Chris doesn't want to hug his dad while his dad's dressed like Mrs. Doubtfire. I don't know if it's because he just saw him peeing in a dress or because of the padding, or I don't know. So that moment was a little bit weird.
I do just want to say, in the fact that he does dress as Mrs. Doubtfire, and gets back to the selfishness of Daniel and the entitlement. This is so he can see his kids not so they can see him. Because
right. They don't even know it's him.
They don't even know it's him because relationships are supposed to be reciprocal. Like,
right.
Yeah. I'm getting like,
yeah. The more you spin it out, the grosser it gets. Yeah. And he says to them, like, you can't tell mom. I'll be talking to you through plexiglass if you tell mom. And you can't tell Natty, the 5-year-old, because she'll blow my cover. It's just between us, the three of us, which is, yuck. And then related sort of transphobia is that moment you remember with the bus driver. It's exactly as you remember. It's the second time we see him, the bus driver, pick him up as Mrs. Doubtfire, and he kind of flirted with Mrs. Doubtfire the first time. The second time, oh, it's lovely to see you again. It's exactly the way you remember. His skirt had come up above his knee a little bit, and so the bus driver sees the super hairy knee, and he covers the knee, and he says, "Oh, I like the Mediterranean women. Like, it's natural, just as God made you." And he says, "God broke the mold when he made me as Mrs. Doubtfire." And this is from the analyst that I mentioned, whose blog post I'll link to. There's something, again, about that moment of like unwanted flirtation that every woman in the world has experienced that then is meant to be sort of funny when it's directed at Williams dressed in drag. And also, there was a cringe, but like there's something a little off about it. The analyst that I read suggested that the movie makers are suggesting that Daniel as Doubtfire like can handle it better than a woman would. I don't know if that person is right, that analyst is right, that that's what's happening, but there is something that just feels a little off about the whole thing in terms of like, part of it, I guess, is just making a joke of unwanted flirtation, which happens all the time, and frankly is often presages
violence.
Yeah.
That moment, part of it is like, you don't get the impression that Daniel's in any danger. And Daniel doesn't feel like he's in any danger. And the fact that this bus driver is attracted to Daniel as Doubtfire,
it makes him the butt of a joke.
Yeah, but also in a way, like, kind of makes him sort of sweetly naive in a way. I don't know. It made me like the bus driver.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to feel about how this is put in this movie, because it's just like, because when I've had that experience, it has never felt like that.
No, it doesn't feel sweet.
And like, the thing is, like, I've never connected it to when I've been alone with someone who has been flirting with me that I have not been interested in. But I have been I've been appreciative of that moment in this, which even as I've been like, yeah, that was supposed to be cringe humor and like, which I didn't take it that way. Like, it's weird. There's a lot there. You could unpack this scene. And like, what exactly were they going for with this, other than the fact that like, we are fucked up when it comes to gender expression in this culture?
Because I think you were right. We were like, he thinks he's found out, and I don't know.
And
I don't know.
While the bus driver is flirting, there's never anything like,
nothing untoward happens.
Nothing untoward, and he never seems pushy. Is that
he
right?
never even asks her for a date or anything.
Yeah.
He just sort of flirts.
He just flirts. Yeah. So like, unlike there's in Tootsie, there's flirtation that is very much like it becomes like harassment to the point of assault, I think, where Dustin Hoffman's character is like, no means no. Whereas this is much more like,
it's much gentler.
And more like, isn't it funny that there's some men who find this woman attractive? And I was more like, I like that sweet bus driver.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think part of what's sweet about it, too, is that one expected a transphobic response to the hairy leg, and that's not what came. I think that is what's sweet about it.
And the natural, just like God made you, which now we know that Daniel is a cisgender man. Not that I personally had that language.
Yeah, I don't
think
we were. Yeah. Certainly not in common parlance.
And who knows if the bus driver would have been comfortable with a transgender woman, but we know that the bus driver is perfectly comfortable with non-culturally acceptable gender expression. And in 1993, and it's just like, Good on ya.
Yeah. 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 All right. So the last thing I'll say, and then I'll try and wrap up or let you share anything. Also, some of the actual messages around women's sexuality undergirding this, like, are kind of yucky. Right? Like, Miranda, I mean, I'm sorry, but aesthetically, Pierce Brosnan is the upgrade over Robin Williams. I loved Robin Williams. He's a great guy. And not unattractive. But Pierce Brosnan is like an Adonis. You know, I mean, they even have Natalie say to him, they see him at a swimming pool, and she says, "Your stomach does not look like my daddy's." And then, actually, as Doubtfire, Daniel says, "I can see that water must be very cold." Like, what? Holy shit. Anyway, because her ex-husband is our hero, like, I don't know what we're supposed to think, but again and again and again, as Doubtfire, Daniel slut-shames her. Even though she's divorced, she's courting this man. I mean, he actually says, as Doubtfire, to try and, like, intimidate Stuart at the birthday dinner, at that horrible, cringeworthy scene, talks about the fact that she's got a vibrator in her drawer and he's surprised she hasn't chipped a tooth. And, like, I don't know, like, weird stuff that he's saying about this woman who is the mother of his children. It's just gross. And I think we are meant to think he is out of line. I think we're meant to think he's out of line. You know, when she's getting dressed for dinner and, like, asking opinions about different dresses, and he's like, they're all harlots' dresses, you know, as Doubtfire, you know. And I'm watching, I'm like, go get it, Miranda. Of course. Yes. Yes. Why wouldn't you? And she's like, Miranda asks Mrs. Doubtfire, how long after Mr. Doubtfire before you know, had desire and, like, you know, went out with other men? And she said, never. As Mrs. Doubtfire, never. When the father of your children is out of the picture, then it is your job to just be celibate. And Miranda's like, celibate? And, like, in my head, I'm thinking, why are you still listening to Mrs. Doubtfire, Miranda? Like, what? No, not even in 93. So I just wanted to, like, also put that out there. And what's interesting, too, is that Brosnan's character does not come back after the scene when he gets the Heimlich. We don't see him again, so we don't know what happens to him because he has served his purpose in the movie. So I would have liked another scene with him.
Just to know that,
you know, yeah, that he and Miranda are, like, able to make it work, and they seem to really care about each other.
Yeah.
So,
and he's appropriate. He's an appropriate.
He's age appropriate. He's, like, responsible. He likes her kids. He's good with her kids. You know, I don't know. So, any final things you want to share before I try and wrap up what I had to?
No, I don't think I'll be revisiting this one.
Yeah.
It's not going on the family movie night.
I have seen it for the last time. So, this movie passes the Bechdel test. It doesn't get much else right about gender, I don't think. So, I anticipated transphobia, and there is some, but not nearly as much as I thought there would be. What there is a very weird braiding of sort of ideas about gender and essentialism, essentialist gender, and, like, gender roles, insofar as Daniel Hillard has to literally put on femininity in order to learn to be responsible. I don't know what to do with that. Like, clearly he was capable of making the kids do their homework and learning to cook and cleaning up because he did it as Mrs. Doubtfire, but he couldn't do it until he became Mrs. Doubtfire. And then he was able to do it as Daniel. And that feels really messed up to me. And part of it feels realistic, as you pointed out, because so often men feel entitled to everything until their wives are like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And they make them face real consequences. And then some men learn to step up. And that feels real. What doesn't feel real, or what I don't know what to do with, is the fact that this character, this dad and husband, needed to perform as a woman in order to step up.
Well, it's unclear if the filmmakers were doing that intentionally to skewer something, or if this was just like, let's put Robin Williams in drag.
Robin Williams in a dress.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, was that actually trying to skewer hypermasculinity and sort of toxic it's not even toxic masculinity, but just sort of like the learned helplessness and like overgrown man-child.
Yeah. Weaponized incompetence.
Exactly. So, I don't know. There's also an undercurrent of anti-feminism in this film that plays out through the various female characters, from Miranda, the sort of ball-busting workaholic, to the court-appointed liaison who is humorless, to even the oldest daughter who has been started to be tainted by feminism and expects her dad to actually like do the work. Yeah. So that anti-feminist mode combined with some of the entitlement and the, we're meant to forgive really bad behavior because he's funny and because he genuinely loves his children, it's not a far leap from some of the assumptions under this movie to sort of men's rights activism bullshit. There's also like a shit ton of cringe humor in this movie that is very difficult to watch for me. Mm-hmm. I do not enjoy secondhand embarrassment.
Oh,
and there's a lot of it in this movie. Just a lot. So I think that's everything we talked about. What did I miss?
The fact that there's that sense of like, particularly in divorce, dads often want to be the fun dad, and that there's something in this, which when like, and this, as this film points out, like the kids thrive when they actually have
discipline and
structure.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some other stuff in there that's gross that y'all can watch it or not, but anyway. Yeah.
So apparently not all of Robin Williams' work can be revisited as a gem.
Yeah. Nope. Not this one.
Yeah.
Not this one. So what are you bringing me next week? I don't remember.
So next week I'm bringing you Titanic.
Oh! Friends, I have never seen Titanic.
I cannot. How is that possible?
It's going on my gravestone. Here lies Tracie. She never saw Titanic. All right. Well, I look forward to hearing about it.
Yes.
Next week.
Next week.
This show is a labor of love, but that doesn't make it free to produce. If you enjoy it even half as much as we do, please consider helping to keep us overthinking. You can support us at our Patreon. There's a link in the show notes. Or leave a positive review so others can find us. And of course, share the show with your people. Thanks for listening. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes.
Thank you to Resonate Recordings for editing today's episode.
Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head?